and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Negotiators from the United States and Iran met in Switzerland for their first round of talks and signing a preliminary peace deal aimed at ending the war. But signs of strain quickly emerged, with U.S. President Donald Trump and Iran's chief negotiator publicly trading warnings. Meanwhile, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said he will not compromise on preventing Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons. The Israeli leader also said the country's forces will remain in what it calls a security zone inside Lebanon to guarantee the safety of the citizens of northern Israel. South Korea's President Lee Jae-myung has announced a staff reshuffle at the Blue House as he begins his second year in office. A veteran journalist and former CEO of Yonhap News Agency has been named Senior Secretary for Public Relations, while a former prosecutor has been tapped to lead civil affairs and justice policy. The first direct U.S.-Iran talks since last week's ceasefire agreement got underway in Switzerland on Sunday. However, U.S. President Donald Trump threatened fresh military action against Iran, prompting an angry response from Tehran and raising concerns about the fragile peace deal. Our Chung Il-im reports.
U.S. and Iranian officials met on Sunday in Switzerland for the first round of peace talks after signing a memorandum of understanding aimed at ending months of conflict in the Middle East. Led by U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance and with mediators from Pakistan and Qatar, the meeting is part of efforts to turn an interim ceasefire into a more lasting peace agreement. But even before talks began, Trump threatened to attack Iran if it failed to rein in Hezbollah, the Tehran-backed militant group in Lebanon. In a social media post, Trump warned that Iran would be hit very hard again if the violence continued, while he also told Fox News that he had warned Iranian officials that they won't even make it back to their country if they don't make a deal. Iran responded sharply. Chief negotiator Mohammad Ghalibaf said Washington should watch their words carefully, adding that Iran's armed forces were prepared for confrontation. According to Iranian sources, this rhetoric caused formal sessions in Switzerland to grind to a sudden halt, resulting in a stall in peace talks. However, sources from the U.S. told CNN that negotiations were not over and that the American delegation remained in constant meetings and expected to work through the night with Lebanon believed to be one of the main issues. Iran argues that the United States has failed to uphold commitments to stop Israeli military operations against Hezbollah, while Israel insists its actions are separate from the conflict with Iran. Discussions will also focus on keeping the Strait of Hormuz open and laying the groundwork for technical negotiations on Iran's nuclear program. Chung Il-im, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, Israel says it will not back down from its efforts to prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons, despite ongoing talks between Washington and Tehran in Switzerland. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu also vowed to maintain military pressure on Hezbollah and keep Israeli forces in southern Lebanon as long as it's necessary. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel will not compromise on preventing Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons and will continue military pressure on Hezbollah, even as U.S. and Iranian officials hold talks in Switzerland. Speaking at the Jewish News Syndicate International Policy Summit on Sunday, Netanyahu stressed that as long as he's the Prime Minister of Israel, Iran would not have any nuclear weapons.
No matter what happens in the talks, with an agreement, without an agreement, I pledge to you that Iran, as long as I'm Prime Minister, will never have a nuclear weapon.
Netanyahu said Israel's military campaigns against Iran over the past year were launched to eliminate what he described as an immediate existential threat. He argued that without those operations, Iran could already possess nuclear weapons, adding that Israel intends to preserve the gains achieved through its military actions. The Israeli leader also reaffirmed that Israeli forces will remain in a security zone in southern Lebanon for as long as necessary to protect residents in northern Israel from Hezbollah attacks. He stressed that maintaining Israel's security remains a non-negotiable priority. Meanwhile, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz said troops operating in southern Lebanon face no restrictions when responding to threats. In a statement on Sunday, Katz said the Israeli military remains free to act against any danger to its forces and emphasized that all of the military's achievements in Lebanon are being maintained. His comments came as U.S.-Iran talks got underway in Switzerland, with Tehran reportedly placing the Hezbollah-Israel conflict high on the agenda. Despite the diplomatic efforts, Israeli officials signaled they have no plans to ease military operations against Hezbollah, as troops continue to operate in the security zone in southern Lebanon. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Now, for more on the talks between the United States and Iran, we're joined today by Dr. Robert Lawrence, professor of English and Turkic Studies at Dongdak Women's University. Professor Lawrence, thanks for coming on today.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So, strain appears to have emerged on the very first day of talks in Switzerland with President Donald Trump and Iranian negotiator publicly trading warnings. What do you make of the latest meeting?
Well, obviously, there's a great deal of tension around the talks. Iran is threatening to walk out because continued violence in Lebanon, claiming that Israel is the aggressor and it violates Article 1 of the MOU. They were also displeased with some of the rhetoric coming from President Trump's social media, and likewise, President Trump was displeased with some of the rhetoric coming from President Pezeshkian and Speaker Galibaf. So, while Vice President Vance is keeping a pretty optimistic tone for the time being, the reality is that there's a situation where both teams ostensibly think that they have the upper hand in the negotiation. The U.S. would probably prefer to get some concrete steps made to show the public that are a little bit less ambiguous than the MOU, which has come under some pretty heavy criticism from all sides domestically. Iran, I think, on the flip side, is kind of determined to shape the narrative and not be rushed into anything. In fact, I think it probably wants to drag out the negotiations because it thinks its leverage will increase as the U.S. midterms get closer. So it's going to focus on and contest every single detail and concentrate on the information space. And this was evident this morning when the Iranian side refused to take part in the photo op. Before today's meeting. So, I don't expect there to be any major breakthroughs in today's talks, or if there are any breakthroughs, then I think the details of those breakthroughs will be contested in the information front, similar to how the 14-point MOU has been contested since it's gone public.
Right, and the most difficult issue in the negotiations is Iran's nuclear program, right? And under the preliminary ceasefire, the 14-point peace deal, the Iran will not develop nuclear weapons in exchange for sanctions relief, but Trump has insisted that the deal would ensure that Iran will never buy, develop, or produce a nuclear weapon. And some analysts say that this preliminary deal fails short of that goal. What's your take on this?
I think it depends on how you determine, the utility of the MOU. The first sentence of Article 8 of the MOU says that Iran reaffirms that it will not develop or procure nuclear weapons. Well, that's really nothing more than a reiteration of the promise that they made when they signed the NTP, the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and that was back in 1970. So, given the noncompliance, that the history of noncompliance Iran has with the IAEA, the MOU's critics don't find this to be sufficient, for obvious reasons. However, the rest of Article 8 implies that the details of the nuclear program, such as further enrichment or the stockpiled uranium, are to be dealt with in the negotiations over the next 60 days. So as the MOU stands right now, it changes pretty much nothing, to be honest. But if you look at it as one step of many in a sequential trust-building, kind of framework, then the results of the process will indicate if the president has achieved his goal, well, not the steps. But if we look at it as it is right now, it doesn't really change the discussion at all. It hasn't moved it anywhere.
And another key issue is the Strait of Hormuz. And the Iranian military says it's closed the strait again, but the U.S. military says traffic continues to flow. So does this suggest the ceasefire is becoming more fragile?
Well, right, like you said, the two sides are giving very different information about the conditions of traffic through the strait. just a few hours ago, President Trump issued some very strong threats regarding the condition in the Strait. I think that the ceasefire has always been fragile at best. We've repeatedly seen the use of force come into place since the ceasefire has come into place. And if we include the Lebanese front into this discussion, then there's really never been a ceasefire. I think it's a bit of posturing on part of the Iranians. They think they have leverage, and they don't think the U.S. has the political will to re-engage in kinetic operations. Even this morning, Iranian officials openly called President Trump's threats empty and pretty much meaningless. So going into the negotiations, I think that they're trying to show that they have cards, and it was also, likely a response to some of the rhetoric I mentioned before. For the U.S., this could potentially be a deal breaker. Much like the conditions in Lebanon could be a deal breaker for Iran. So, if the ceasefire rests on the implementation of the MOU, then both countries are arguing that the other is already in violation of the agreement, which increases the probability of kinetic military operations resuming.
Right, like you just mentioned, what's happening in Lebanon between Israel and Hezbollah are complicating the negotiations. How do you see the situation in Lebanon unfolding from here?
I'm not very hopeful in Lebanon right now, to be honest. Both Israel and Hezbollah are arguing that the other initiated the breach in the ceasefire. That was supposed to go into effect on Friday, but since then we've seen deaths on both sides, and fighting has pretty much been constant. Neither of these sides were part to the negotiations, and they're expected to adhere to the deal. And while the U.S. has a great deal of influence in Israel, Israel is its own country, and it has its own domestic political realities that make agreeing to an unpopular idea very complicated. And since October 7th, if there's one thing that the Israeli people have been, in pretty much full agreement is that, they want to combat anything close to their border. So the idea of fighting Hezbollah is not unpopular in Israel, and imposing this ceasefire on them is not been a popular idea in Israel, and they have elections coming up. So, even though the MOU is mentioning Lebanon is also quite ambiguous. In Article 1, it talks about ensuring the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Lebanon by both nations and their allies. There's a lot to unpack there, and it's very open to interpretation. So both the U.S. and Iran are already crying foul on the activities of the other allies in Lebanon, and there doesn't really seem to be a lot of signs of the situation improving. And, in the last couple of days, we've also seen President Trump talk about maybe getting Syrian forces involved in combating Hezbollah. And I think that'll further complicate the situation. So, unfortunately, like I said before, I'm not very optimistic with Lebanon right now.
I see. I guess we'll have to see how that plays out. All right, Professor Lawrence, thank you so much for coming on today. We appreciate it.
Thank you. You have a wonderful day.
Thank you. South Korea's President Lee Jae-myung has announced a staff reshuffle at the Blue House for his second year in office. Those include new chief secretaries for public relations and civil affairs. Our Yoon Jung-min reports.
In a key shakeup, President Lee Jae-myung has appointed Song Ki-hong, former CEO of Yonhap News Agency and a veteran journalist, as his new senior secretary for public relations.
For the second year in office, we have agreed upon the need to bolster and broaden communication with the public.
As for civil affairs and justice, former prosecutor Han Chan-sik has been tapped to lead related policies, including the follow-ups to the Lee administration's prosecutorial reform drive.
He is the right person to complete the separation of the powerful institution based on the recently established Serious Crimes Investigation Agency and the Office of Public Prosecution.
Pharmacist turned labor activist Kim Kyung-ja has been named to lead social policy. Army Commander Kang Gun-jak will take on the role of the first Deputy Director of National Security to bolster self-reliant defense capability and political neutrality of uniformed officers. And current Economic Security Secretary Seongju has been promoted and named as the third Deputy Director of National Security, in charge of dealing with increasing global uncertainties. The Chief of Staff noted that the new appointments are aimed at speeding up policy tasks for the president's second year in office. More appointments are expected to follow at the top office, as the post of Secretary for AI and Future Planning remains vacant since the campaigning period for the June 3rd local elections. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
The U.S. military's Terminal High Altitude Area Defense Interceptors have been returned to a South Korean military base where they were originally deployed. According to Yonhap News Agency on Sunday, all 6 THAAD missile system launchers have been returned to their base in Seongju, North Gyeongsang Province. The truck-mounted launchers have been moved to Osan Air Base in Pyeongtaek in March, shortly after the outbreak of the U.S.-Israeli war against Iran. That sparked speculation that the United States could transfer the anti-ballistic missile defense system interceptors from South Korea to the Middle East to support military operations. However, military sources say the launchers and other key components of the THAAD battery remained in South Korea throughout the period. Dano is a traditional Korean holiday celebrated on the 5th day of the 5th month of the lunar calendar. In Gangneung, one of the country's largest Dano festivals is bringing centuries-old customs to life. Our Shin-soon was there.
Green-tinted water flows through this person's hair, carrying the fresh scent of sweet flag. One by one, people bow their heads, believing each rinse washes away misfortune and welcomes good health. As the bustling Nanjang marketplace fills up, the rhythmic chants of the shamanic rituals could open Dano Day.
Although many of these costumes have faded over time, they're still very much alive here in Gangneung. Behind me, century-old rituals continue.
Embracing this year's theme of leaving worries behind, visitors gain renewed strength from the first-hand enjoyment of traditional games. Cheers erupt from the Sirim wrestling ring as wrestlers grapple for victory, while giant swing sends hanbok-clad riders soaring into the summer sky. Among 72 programs, the festival's community spirit is perhaps best reflected in its surichi rice cakes. Made from rice donated by households despite rising prices, they offer visitors more than a traditional snack, symbolizing a local commitment to preserving the event.
We took a flight through Air Premia from IED in Washington, D.C. to Incheon. We actually came for the festival. So she's half Korean, my wife is full Korean, right? Her parents are from here. I got kind of thrown into the mix of Korean heritage for a while, and it's just cool to actually see it all develop.
Through its long-standing partnership with the International Information and Networking Center for Intangible Cultural Heritage, the festival also welcomed heritage groups and performance from sister cities and countries, including China and the Philippines.
People from around the world are increasingly interested not only in Korea's traditions, but also in Korea's strong sense of community. Sharing those values helps build deeper cultural connections.
For many visitors, the exchange offers more than a chance to experience Korean traditions, creating a sense of connection that feels surprisingly familiar.
Gangneung is a sister city of Jixing in China, so I was excited to come here. After arriving, I was struck by the warmth and enthusiasm of the people. It really feels like home.
Running until June 22nd, the festival reaches its peak on Dano Day with the Gangneung Sacheon Hapyeongdapgyo play, where torch-bearing villagers cross the bridge recognized as Gangwon's intelligible cultural heritage.
After 20 years of its UNESCO inscription, Gangneung Danoje preserves Korea's living heritage beyond borders, bridging communities from all around the world. Shin-soon, Arirang News, Gangneung.
Good morning, I'm Chu Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. In Colombia, right-wing candidate Abelardo De La Espriella held a narrow lead in Colombia's presidential runoff on Sunday, taking just under 50% of the vote with nearly 95% of ballots counted. Data from the National Registry Office shows leftist rival Iván Cepeda trailed by roughly 368,000 votes at 48.4%. De La Espriella, who has been endorsed by U.S. President Trump, has promised a tough crackdown on crime, an end to peace talks with armed groups, and a boost to the oil and gas sector. Cepeda vowed to continue the policies of outgoing President Gustavo Petro, including pensions for the poor and a halt to new oil projects. About 400,000 voters cast blank ballots in what is seen as a protest vote. A severe heat wave gripped much of Europe on Sunday, with temperatures approaching 40 degrees Celsius, prompting health warnings, transport disruption, and the closure of hundreds of schools. The surge arrived on the summer solstice, driven by hot air pushing north from the Sahara. France placed about a third of the country on red alert, banned drinking alcohol in public in some areas, and ordered 845 schools to close Monday. Spain put large areas of the country on high alert, with the heat expected to last until midweek. Italy issued red warnings for 8 cities on Sunday, including Milan and Florence. In Cuba, a celebrated hero of the Cuban Revolution, Ramiro Valdes, has died at the age of 94. President Miguel Diaz-Canel announced his death on Sunday. Valdes fought beside Fidel Castro in the 1953 assault that launched the uprising against the Batista government. He was one of only 12 men to survive the 1956 voyage of the yacht Granma that restarted the insurrection, serving as deputy commander to Che Guevara. After the revolution triumphed in 1959, he headed Cuba's security agency and later held posts including interior minister and vice president. He remained active in government into his 90s, focusing on the island's energy crisis. The 5th installment in Pixar's Toy Story series opened with $160 million in domestic ticket sales and $312 million globally in its opening weekend. The estimates on Sunday make it the biggest debut of the year and a franchise record. Toy Story 5 comes 31 years after the original and has far surpassed the $120 million opening of Toy Story 4 in 2019. The franchise had already grossed more than $3 billion before this release. Directed by Pixar veteran Andrew Stanton, Toy Story 5 features returning voices of Tom Hanks and Tim Allen, along with a new song by Taylor Swift.
Good morning, I'm Lee Ji-hyun with the latest weather updates. This week's weather will offer a bit of a break from those intense summer heat we had last week. Temperatures will remain close to seasonal norms, bringing typical late June weather to the country. However, you'll want to keep an umbrella within reach today. Rain is already falling across the southern regions with 10 to 40 millimeters expected. However, Jeju Island will see heavier rain through tomorrow dawn with up to 80 millimeters in the forecast. Meanwhile, central regions in Gyeongsang-Bukdo province will have to watch for passing rain from this morning through the evening. There could be 5 to 40 millimeters of heavy downpours at times, along with thunderstorms. And the capital is forecast to see heavy rain at around 5 p.m. Lastly, checking on today's highs. Afternoon highs will be 1 to 7 degrees Celsius lower than yesterday, getting up to 28 degrees Celsius here in the capital. Daegu much bearable at 24 degrees. Busan and Gwangju will be getting up to 25 degrees Celsius this afternoon. Just beware if you're heading out onto the water. Conditions remain rough.
Now that's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.
It feels a bit off. You might even wonder if it was made incorrectly. Let's take a closer look. Its nose is naturally lifted. The ears are laid back, and it roars with its mouth open down to the finely detailed fangs. The beard flows back, and details around the eyes, mouth, tail, and feet are rendered, using the incision technique, bringing the piece vividly to life. On top of the lid, seated at a slight angle, the creature is a lion. In Buddhism, lions are regarded as mystical guardians of truth. And during the Goryeo dynasty, many Celadon works were crafted in the form of lions. Though lions are seen as brave and powerful, this one feels endearingly cute, but no less significant. The smoke rising from the burner passes through the holes in the lid and slowly escapes into the air through the lion's mouth. As for the lid, an additional tier was raised on top, carefully placing the lion above it, while the body of the burner is adorned with expansive cloud motifs. What truly makes this incense burner shine is that subtle twist in perspective. Rather than centered, it's set slightly off to one side, gently breaking away from the conventional idea of a perfect symmetry. Small yet confident, off-center yet beautiful. The essence of Goryeo Celadon defying convention. Shall we be drawn into the quiet charm of this piece, whose imperfection creates its own perfection?
We're here to bring a new time of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bringing news just for you. It's Monday, June 22nd here in Seoul. I'm Lee Soo-jin, and this is News Generation. Tuesday is higher.
Great to be here today.
Good to have you, also Cues, with us.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. And both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. So we're now at the start of a new work week, and for many people, that means settling back into daily routines and thinking about what they're working towards in the long run. As conversations around work-life balance and financial security continue to evolve, one question often comes up: when is the right time to call an end to a career? And retirement goals can vary widely depending on lifestyle, finances, and personal priorities. So to kick off our discussion today, I want to first ask our panelists here. So Kyun, how old would you ideally like to be when you retire?
Honestly, I would like to retire right now, if I can.
Relatable.
But that's not the reality. But I can't really put an exact age to my retirement age. But I want to start working when the time is right and when the kind of workforce or people around me tell me, I think it's time you should leave. If they don't want me anymore, if I'm not needed anymore, I think I will realize, oh, maybe I should start working. But, I say this because as a freelancer, nothing is guaranteed, from paid annual leave, severance pay, all things like that. So as a freelancer, you want to work as much as you can while you can and save up, make as much as you can. And I generally love everything I'm doing right now because as a freelancer, you get to not choose, but be exposed to a lot of different types of gigs. For example, I get to do news gen, radio news announcing, emceeing, even teach English, and I enjoy every single part of those kind of different jobs. So I want to cherish it and protect it as long as I can. But like I said, who knows when I should start working, but for me, I want to work until my body kind of tells me I should start working.
I mean, it's such a special thing to like what you do and also be really good at what you do.
Exactly, it's a privilege and it's a blessing as well.
So what about you, Kaya?
Well, I think I actually kind of agree with Ki-hyun to some extent. I think we are still kind of young, and
you're young, not me.
Yeah. There's so many things that I really want to do in my life. I just want to keep learning and challenging myself and trying new things for as long as I can. So even if I became financially independent, actually, I didn't really have to work for money anymore. I think I would still choose to work. To me, work is about much more than just earning a paycheck. It's a way to meet people and stay connected to society and also keep growing as a person. And of course, I just really would love to stay with the News Generation family and all of our viewers for as long as possible.
And we'd like to have you as long as possible as well.
Yeah.
So all this shows that retirement isn't necessarily about stopping work, but perhaps having the freedom to keep doing work that's meaningful and fulfilling. So we're going to talk more about this, but first, let's take a look at the screen. With people living longer and healthier lives, many are questioning whether the current official retirement age is becoming outdated. The government is taking note and is pushing a plan to gradually raise the mandatory retirement age from 60 to 65 by 2037. Today on News Generation, we're taking a closer look at how younger generations view the prospect of working longer, sharing our own thoughts on whether extending the retirement age is the right move, and discussing what direction Korean society should take as it adapts to a rapidly aging future. Just as we saw in a video, the issue of extending the retirement age touches on everything from demographics to jobs and retirement security. The debate has been gaining momentum as Korea grapples with rapid aging and a shrinking workforce. So what is driving the exact push to extend the retirement age, Kyun?
Like you just mentioned, Soo-jin, the South Korean government is seeking to gradually raise the mandatory retirement age from the current 60 to 65 by the year 2037. Now, to find out about the real reasons supporting this change, let's take a look at the screen. In a survey conducted by the Federation of Korean Trade Unions, 1,000 South Korean adults were asked why the retirement age should be extended. Now, while multiple responses were allowed, the number one reason at 69% was the economic insecurity caused by the income gap before receiving the national pension, which the gap currently is 5 years. Now, the second reason was longer life expectancy, and the last reason was population decline. Now, almost 90% of all the respondents agreed for the extension of the retirement age, showing their strong push for this particular revision.
So if people are living longer and retiring before they're eligible for full pension benefits, many could face years of financial uncertainty. Still, agreeing on the need for change is one thing, but agreeing on how to do it is another. So what are labor groups and businesses currently divided over here?
Yes, so the labor groups and businesses, they generally agree that people may need to work longer, but now they are divided over who should bear the cost and how the system should be designed. So labor groups want the mandatory retirement age itself to be raised from 60 to 65 while keeping existing employment relationships and benefits intact. Businesses, on the other hand, worry that doing so could increase labor costs and reduce opportunities for younger job seekers. So that's why many companies prefer a re-employment system where workers retire first and then are rehired again under a new contract. So a big reason behind this debate is Korea's seniority-based wage system, where employees generally earn more as they get older. As a result, companies are concerned about extending the retirement age without changing the current wage structure.
So that really highlights how the issue goes beyond simply asking people to work longer. It also raises questions about wages, productivity, and fairness between generations. And as the debate continues, many younger Koreans are wondering what all this means for their own careers and futures. So to get a more personal and in-depth perspective on this, we're going to talk to someone from a country where mandatory retirement age has also been widely discussed. And that conversation will take place right after break, so don't go anywhere.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search out channel Arirang News. Click Posts and cast your vote in the poll. Make a new type of news with us.
We're joined now by Walter, Japan correspondent for the Straits Times, for a closer look at how Japan is grappling with many of the same challenges. So hello, Walter. Thank you so much for connecting with us today.
Hello, thanks so much for having me.
Right, Walter, so what's the current situation in Japan regarding retirement age reform, and how does it compare to the discussions that are currently taking place in Korea?
Well, in terms of Japan's demographic playbook, in terms of its aging population and the fact that its entire population is on the decline, I think Japan is essentially several pages ahead of South Korea. And I guess based on that, its discussions on retirement age has also been several steps ahead of South Korea. And interestingly, legally, Japan still keeps its base retirement age at 60, but since last year, companies are obliged to offer a path to keep workers employed until 65 if the employees want to continue working. Right now, there's already a push to raise this age up to 70, but these are still in preliminary stages of discussion. So the catch is that a lot of companies, as we heard earlier, of a similar suggestion being mooted in South Korea, the catch is that a majority of Japanese companies kind of get around this by using the rehiring method. So a worker formally retires at 60 and are then brought back on contract-based terms, which are often cheaper and comes with fewer benefits. So that it sounds a bit inhumane, but I guess for most of these seniors, the priority is to keep themselves active in the workforce, and so the money is not the key issue. And doing so also kind of saves corporations some money that it can then be used to channel onto wages of younger employees, whilst also keeping the seniors themselves active. So Japan is also trying to encourage more seniors to stay in the workforce by making it more lucrative to postpone the withdrawals of their pension beyond the age of 60, which is the starting point when they are allowed to get reduced pension benefits. So the later they postpone the withdrawal, the more money they get.
Right, thank you, Walter. And my next question is, how do younger Japanese feel about people working longer?
Right, that's a very interesting question. I think globally there is this common narrative of some sort of, generational warfare, or that there's this idea that youth maybe resent older workers for hogging the corporate ladder, because if they don't move, there's no way they can move up, right? And I'm sure there is some sense of frustration in corporate Japan as well, especially since the image that most people have internationally of Japanese boardrooms is how they are dominated by white hat executives who refuse to relinquish their board seats. But I think increasingly some companies are getting around this by forcing this so-called handover, by shifting these older executives into advisory roles rather than overseeing the day-to-day management of the company. But beyond that, if you look at, say, day-to-day jobs, everyday jobs, be it in retail and logistics and manufacturing on the factory lines, I think it's less of resentment, but more of pragmatic acceptance, especially since Japan's labor shortage is really very bad. It's probably going to get worse because it is getting more difficult to hire foreign workers. So the only people who are left to plug these gaps are really elderly workers, seniors who remain in the workforce. And I think youth can also kind of feel the maths through their wallets, right? Because if the seniors are not active in the workforce, then they are going to bear the brunt of, higher pension payments, higher tax payments. And so the financial burden on them is just going to go up.
Walter, how can countries balance support for seniors and jobs for youth?
That's another very difficult question, but I kind of think that maybe we should look at it as two sides of the same coin. So for youth, governments must of course offer hope to them by ensuring things like they have a comfortable wage to live on even after paying into the taxes, into the pension system. And of course, they must be able to see a very clear career progression. But for seniors, of course, it's not going to just be about working endlessly till they die, right? But I think we also have to redefine what sort of value they can bring to the workforce. And for governments and countries, I think they have to seriously look into how seniors can continue upskilling, reskilling, and maybe embrace lifelong learning so that they can increasingly participate in this flexible work from anywhere era, especially if they were in the white collar job before. Alternatively, I think there is also scope for seniors to step into more community facing roles such as childcare, since it is now becoming more common for both parents to work. And so I think that kind of helps communities become more tight-knit and kind of cements a place in the community as well. So ultimately, I think seniors also have this incredible economic and cultural value if they are able to transfer the knowledge that they have gained over the decades in the form of analog skills that that can't be replicated with digital algorithms. If this can be transferred onto a younger generation, I think it also enables them to be socially embedded in communities. And of course, there are so many studies out there that show how, if seniors are more active as they age, it benefits them both physically and mentally as well.
Walter, before we let you go, I would like to ask you a very quick question. It could be a little personal as well. Is there an age that you would actually want to retire one day? A certain age when you want to start working?
Gosh, I wish I could retire right now.
Just like everyone else.
Like everyone else, right? But yeah, but beyond that, I don't have a target in mind, to be honest. But I just hope to be able to retire comfortably, and I'll know it when I get there, I think.
I agree with you.
I think it's a very fair answer. I think I would also like to retire now, but also I was kind of wondering about this as well because I'm also a reporter, so I was wondering if that would influence like how long you want to continue to work.
Right, yeah, that's always going to be a tough one, right? Because as a reporter, I mean, you get the adrenaline rush from, speaking to all sorts of different people every day, and no 2 days are the same. So there's that part of that which I kind of think I'll miss if I were to retire. But then again, it's also very taxing job, right? And I guess in this era, reportage can take many different forms. So if I were to step back from the front lines and if I were to retire, who knows, maybe I could make a living writing Substacks about Japan and hope that people will subscribe to me.
All right, so thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights with us today, Walter.
Not at all, my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we just spoke to a Japan correspondent about how other countries are handling retirement age policies, how young people are reacting to the issue, and what factors should be kept in mind as the debate moves forward. And this discussion naturally raises questions about how younger Koreans themselves see the issue. So how do they view the raising retirement age, Cuban?
In the same survey that I talked about, people in their 20s and 30s also agree that extending the retirement age is required and necessary, but at the same time, they strongly supported that measured should be more towards supporting youth employment, and it should come first. This is because young people are obviously facing a lot of difficulties in finding new, productive, good future-oriented jobs, and these concerns feel more urgent to them. In fact, according to an analysis by the Korea Development Institute, or KDI, if 20% of workers aged 60 to 64 benefit from the retirement age extension, around 120,000 youth jobs could actually disappear. Now, there were also generational differences over how the retirement age should be extended. People in their 40s prefer an immediate mandatory legal revision, while those in their 20s chose a selective employment system as their top preference. Now, this all makes sense depending on which age bracket you fall under within the workforce. And it's not just about who is willing to sacrifice more, but more about a structural reform that encourages more people to work to the best of their ability, and at the same time being kind of compensated by measuring one's performance and contribution regardless of age and how many years they've actually worked at a single company.
It is quite interesting because for me too personally, I feel like I do like the prospect of being able to work longer, but at the same time, I'm like, does this mean I'll be like, the people that are currently the higher ups will continue to be there for a longer time, which is obviously fine, but I'm always welcome to stay as long as possible. But yeah. So that highlights a real dilemma. Many young people may agree with the need for reform in principle, but they're also worried about finding jobs in the here and now. So who would then benefit most from, I guess, extending the retirement age higher?
Yeah, so currently the people who would benefit most are absolutely those in stable jobs, such as full-time employees at large corporations and public institutions and other like government agencies, but which make only about like 10% of Korea's workforce. So this is because retirement age extensions mainly benefit people who stay employed until retirement. However, according to one survey, among workers in their late 50s and early 60s, only 25% actually retired at the mandatory retirement age, while 35% left due to layoffs, restructuring, or other circumstances. And for younger workers, the picture can look quite different. About 32% of people in their 20s and 30s are employed in non-regular positions, meaning many may not directly benefit from a retirement age extension. So that's why some people worry that the benefits could end up being concentrated among a relatively small group of workers.
So a policy designed to help older workers could end up leaving many people behind if its benefits are concentrated among a relatively small group. So with all that in mind, I want to shift to asking more of a personal question. So after our discussion today, what do you think personally about whether Korea should raise their retirement age or not?
It's a difficult issue that we all need to consider because it's gonna get worse as time goes by, because we all need to know that Korea has already entered a super age society, which means that 20% of the population are age 65 or older, and we're one of the fastest aging populations globally. And on top of that, among OECD nations, South Korea has the highest poverty rate of 40%. Now, this is roughly triple the OECD average of 14.8%. Now, looking ahead, I don't think Korea is in the best situation for the economy to grow bigger and bigger, as we already have experienced over the past few decades. But one way is to, I guess, have more active, capable workers in the workforce instead of just forcing them out because they've reached legal retirement age. Now, of course, employment conditions should be, I guess, re-implemented, having different conditions so that contracts are signed again, so that the company and both the employees can actually benefit mutually and not just benefit just one party at all. And this in turn can actually help the whole economy kind of just stabilize, not just fall behind, but I mean, we don't expect South Korea to grow rapidly, just like we've seen over the past 10 years, but just kind of like stay in the medium. I think that will really help. But like Walter said, there are many issues that will arise in terms of keeping seniors at work. They're going to get pretty much overpaid for the amount of productivity they can actually produce. And that's going to obviously take away quality jobs from young people. So how do we actually balance this? It's not for us to decide. It's for officials and experts to really come up with a good plan for the future.
Like you said, I think balance is really hard. But at the same time, because there are some 65-year-olds who are obviously very competent, they know what to do. They're 65-year-olds nowadays, I feel like they're different from the past.
They're much younger and more active.
Exactly, right. So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I also do think that raising the retirement age is very necessary. So I think people are now living longer, and as just Ki-hoon mentioned, the income gap between retirement and pension benefits is a real concern for a lot of people. And at the same time, I don't think simply raising the retirement age is enough. As Ki-hoon just said, wage system reform and more flexible employment policies should be discussed as well. And personally, I'd also be open to the idea of removing the mandatory retirement age altogether, as some European countries and the United States have done. In the long run, I think a person's ability and willingness to work should matter more than their age.
Right, so I guess a bigger question technically now is what kind of society Korea wants to build moving forward. So, Kyun, what direction do you think Korea should ideally take in terms of this reform?
Korea should not frame the retirement kind of reform as a fight between generations, but the goal should be to build a labor market where older people can work under the new wage system reform, while young people still have real opportunities to enter the job market and finding stable jobs in the long run. So retirement reforms should therefore be treated not as a pension issue, but as part of a broader Korean redesign of Korea's labor market.
Right. What are your thoughts on this?
For me, I think the most important thing for both labor groups and businesses to have enough conversation first and then find a realistic compromise. So the retirement age reform affects people in very different ways. For some, it's about retirement security, while for others, it's about job opportunities, especially for younger job seekers. So that's why the goal shouldn't be to benefit just one group of workers, but to create a system that works for as many people as possible. So ultimately, Korea needs a balanced solution that reflects the interests of society as a whole.
Right. So as Korea becomes an increasingly older society, questions about when and how people retire are only becoming more important, and finding the right balance between supporting older workers and also creating opportunities for younger generations won't be easy. But one thing is quite clear, any solution will need to work for people of all ages. And that brings us to the end of today's episode of News Generation. My News Gen will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time with more stories and discussions. Big thanks to Hayo.
It was my pleasure.
And it was so cute.
Thanks for having me.
And to our viewers, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully, if you do end up being able to clock in longer, it'll be by choice, not by bills. We are News Generation.